Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Safira Wahyu Putrinanda. I'm from C class. So in this video, I will explain about my paper. The title is The Procedures of Applying the Listen and Repeat Method in English Learning as a Second Language for Elementary School. First, the background of problem from my paper. The increasing need for English in the world also seems to be happening in Indonesia. English is important to learn if you don't want to be left behind by other countries. So it is not surprising that in recent years, English learning has been so massive at all levels of the education unit, and preschool education is not exception. Where students are categorized as early childhood, many preschool educational institutions, both international and local, applying English as the language of instruction in learning. In fact, not only that, English is also used by students and teachers as the language of daily communication in the school environment. Next, the identification of the problem. Based on the background of the problem above, the writer or me identifies the problems of the study. How does the teacher apply listen and repeat method for the students of elementary school? Next, in the chapter 2, I will explain the theoretical foundation. I have language acquisition, first language acquisition, second language acquisition, and the last is English as a second language. First, language acquisition or language acquisition is a process of language acquisition carried out by someone unconsciously, implicitly, and informally. Language acquisition is also referred to as a natural process in a person to master the language, or the process of someone starting to recognize communication with their environment verbally. Second, first language acquisition. Language acquisition is the first language acquired and understood by children in life and communicating in their environment by Suhartono. The first language is also called mother language or mother tongue because the child first intimates and learns with the mother. Third, second language acquisition. Obtaining a second language is language that is acquired after the first language. The second language is obtained by children from the environment, both the environment around the house, or the playground, or the school. And the last is English as a second language. In Indonesia, the first language or mother tongue mastered by children is mostly a regional language, while the second language that is mastered is Indonesian. But along with the flow of globalization, the second language acquired by children is not only Indonesian but also English. Next, I will explain about the discussion of my paper. The theoretical approach, according to Bohannon and Warren Lewebecker in Cahyono, there are 4 approaches to mastering English. The 4 approaches are a behavioristic approach, a linguistic approach, a cognitive interactionist approach, and the last is a social interaction approach. Behavioristic approach focuses on learning that is based on stimulus-response relationships. The point of view of this model is language is a function of reinforcement. Linguistic approach. According to the linguistic approach, children have an independent language or grammatical structure. This approach also believes in the existence of a natural mechanism that combines the mastery of children's language. Cognitive interaction approach. Language is an expression of a more general set of cognitive abilities. The development of an adequate cognitive system is the basis for language disclosure. The main task of adherents of this cognitive interaction approach is to identify the order of cognitive maturity and explain how cognitive development can produce language acquisition. Cognitive interaction approach. Language is an expression of a more general set of cognitive abilities. The development of an adequate cognitive system is the basis for language disclosure. The main task of adherents of this cognitive interaction approach is to identify the order of cognitive maturity and explain how cognitive development can produce language acquisition. 4. Social interaction approach. This approach assumes that language development is the result of acquiring grammatical rules. The environment is seen as a source of input for language experience needed for development. The relationship of social interaction and language acquisition itself is a mutually beneficial relationship. Social interaction helps language acquisition, and language acquisition also finalizes social interaction. Next, I will explain the characteristic of elementary school children as language learners. This characteristic include they like to learn while playing, they can tell what they do and listen, they have attention and concentration that is short or not durable, they learn English by listening, imitating, and speaking, and they actually have not realized what to learn a foreign language for, even though they are happy and excited. Next, English learning methods for elementary school children. First, here is one of the methods of learning English for elementary school children that can be applied. First, listen and repeat. In this technique, the teacher says something and the student just listen. Then the teacher says again and students are asked to repeat what was said by teacher. With students listening first, students will better understand and know the correct pronunciation because they are used to listening to the vocabulary spoken by the teacher, so that when students repeat the vocabulary spoken by the teacher, the pronunciation is correct. Next, listen and repeat practice. Activities that can be done by a teacher in the implementation of listen and repeat can be directly by teacher saying the vocabulary, then students repeat. Can be done in a way like in a chain message game where a student whispers a message to others and pass it on to other students. The example is singing. Learning English, especially in early childhood, prefers to emphasize the introduction of basic comments and knowledge of the names, objects, or objects that are around them. Then we can use the music in KBM when just entering class and when this song is sung, and in core learning. And next, the importance of listen and repeat in learning English. Listen and repeat is very important in the process of learning English because by students to listen and then repeat The vocabulary will make children learn more actively by listening and repeat. Children will know the pronunciation of vocabulary in correct English because they are used to listening to vocabulary which is said by the teacher. This will make students more confident to speak English. Listen and repeat will help students reduce errors in pronunciation because the writing and pronunciation in English is different. Learning will also be more meaningful or memorable if students do it. Nah, next, the strengths and weakness of listen and repeat. The strengths: first, students are taught to hear vocabulary and repeat what they hear, and then this will make students familiar with the language they hear. And next, students will also feel happier in this learning. Next, helping students to reduce error in pronunciation. And the last is, if students do it, learning will be more meaningful and memorable. And then, the weakness. First, students will prefer to listen and say rather than write. And then problems for students who have the power of thinking that is not fast enough. And the last is difficult to understand and pronounce and write because in different English. In the last, I will give my conclusion and suggestion. That my conclusion is learning English now is no stranger to teaching early childhood, especially elementary school at children 6 to 12 years. English mastery seems to have become a necessity for students even at almost all levels of education. Learning English can be done with various theoretical approaches such as behavioristic approach, linguistic approach, cognitive interaction approach, and the last is social interaction approach. In teaching English to elementary school at children, teacher must first know the characteristics of the children they teach. This is necessary so that the teacher can determine what kind of learning method is appropriate if applied to elementary school, because each age level has different characteristics, especially in the cognitive aspect. Besides, English learning in elementary school age children must also pay attention to the factors that influence English learning, such as mother tongue, teaching materials, social interaction, family background, and learning media. English learning activities include listening, speaking, reading, and writing. However, for elementary school, children learning is more emphasis on listening and speaking. Of course, English learning in elementary school has positive implication, among which can be seen from the cognitive, personality, and social aspect. And the suggestion for me, learning English that has become a necessity should not be a burden. It is fitting for children to be introduced to English early on as a preparation in facing the challenge of the current globalization, which requires the mastery of English as a support. However, we cannot just forget the language of the nation itself, that is Indonesian. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.